Hi, this is Chris Newson. Welcome to the Root Cause Analysis Podcast, where we'll take our listeners right to the heart of the important EHS issues. We're coming to you live from Woodland Grange, a conference and hotel venue in the Midlands. So, very pleased to welcome Laura Aucott to the Root Cause Analysis Podcast today. Hello, Laura, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for inviting me along, Chris.
No problem. Really excited about today's chat for reasons we'll get into. But let me do a bit of an introduction first. So,
Sure.
Laura is the Associate Director of HSE Recruitment and Executive Network Group. You've been recruiting exclusively in the HSE industry for 14 years across all different sectors. And not only do you do all of that, you're very passionate. I understand. I'm sure we'll get into it. You're very passionate about the safety industry in general, and in the diversity and inclusion aspects of our profession, and how we can do more in that area. So again, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us. You doing okay today?
I'm good. Yeah, good. Sun is shining.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Yeah. Who knows when people will watch this, but it is shining today, so that's good. Yeah. Okay, look, we're going to get straight into the questions. We've got some questions to go through, which I think our listeners, viewers will find interesting. The answers to them anyway. We might go in different directions as we're discussing, so we'll see how it goes. Okay, we'll start with question one. So your bio describes you as a passionate advocate for the safety industry. Just tell us, where did that passion come from? How did it all start?
Yeah, interesting question. So, as you mentioned, I've been recruiting safety people for a long time now. Actually, just turned 15 years.
Wow.
So yeah, been around for quite a long time. And I think like most people, I didn't know much about safety before before I got into safety. I went to university and did philosophy. I was doing sort of temping work and things after that, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And health and safety just wasn't anything I knew of as a career. I didn't know anyone who did health and safety. I wasn't aware. I just thought it was that compliance thing, and I think that was a big misconception in the industry, certainly 15 years ago, hopefully a little bit less so now. But I wanted to get into recruitment. I knew lots of people that did recruitment. I just happened to speak to my co-director Chris, who did run at the time HSE Recruitment, and he started telling me about health and safety, and I don't know, there was just something about it that really, really appealed to me. And he even said, I always remembered this during the interview, he said, no one ever leaves health and safety. You get into it and you just fall for it. I promise you're going to fall for it. And I thought, okay, we'll see. And he was completely right. Yeah, absolutely obsessed with it now. I think for me, the thing with health and safety is that there's so many different avenues to it. It's something that really, really appeals to my sort of ethical and moral sensibilities, but it always keeps you interested because every day is different. There's always new things to learn. There's always new legislation. There's always new trains of thought. We've seen it go from, safety 1, safety 2, we're into HOP. It's just a really interesting industry. And the more you speak to people in the safety industry, the more you get their passion. I think it's just a bit, contagious. Yeah. You catch everyone's enthusiasm. And I think that's the thing I love about it most. Everybody I speak to in health and safety is so passionate. It's not just me that's passionate about it. Everybody loves it. They love what they do. They really care about people. They care about changing the world, really. I mean, what's not to love about that?
I'm with you. Yeah. I'm with you. I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. I think it's interesting. I talk to friends, and it's like, well, my friends know what I do for a job. But when you meet new people, right, and they're like, what do you do? And part of you wants to say, we should make something up, right?
That's cooler up,
right? Yeah, I don't know, whatever that might be. But really, if you think about it, and you've said this, it's the most important job in the world. I mean, I don't want to be over dramatic, but like if you think about, and also I don't want to, downplay anyone else's job, but a lot of jobs are dealing with products, money, etc. Health and safety is dealing with people's health and safety, lives, really. I mean, not to be too dramatic, and increasingly well-being, as we'll go on to discuss. So yeah, and you're right. It's interesting you said people never leave. I mean, I've been in the profession for a long time. Everyone I know and have ever known is still in the profession. So
yeah, exactly.
yeah. And I think you have to have a good moral compass to be in the profession, actually.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that is definitely one of my favorite things about it. Everyone really is very moral. They're very ethical. I think that's why health and safety is such a great industry as well for the new generation coming through, because they are a very ethical, very morally driven generation, and this is just the perfect industry for that.
I can't think of a better one, at the end of the day. Okay, so building on that then, I mean, in your role and your organization, just going a bit off script here, but just outline for us like what you do day to day, if you won't mind, and then we can sort of go from there.
Yeah, of course. So my role has changed a lot over the years. So when I joined HSE Recruitment, I came in as a trainee. I've worked my way up through the ranks, and the day-to-day of the job was recruiting health and safety professionals. So we would talk to clients, we would get a really, really good in-depth understanding of what it is that they need, not just the technical stuff, but the culture piece. Where do they want to take health and safety? What's the journey like? What sort of person is going to fit, and all of that sort of stuff. And then we would go and we would find these people for it. We would interview them, and then help the client through the process. So my team still does all of that, which is great. But about 2 years ago, I kind of pivoted my role when I became a director. Although actually, when did I become a director? 3 or 4 years ago, maybe. But yeah, so I pivoted over the past few years. And what I do now is probably my favorite bit of the job, which is talking, which I just basically spend my days talking to people, and it's brilliant. So I go out and I speak to, safety directors, heads of, global leaders, environmental and sustainability leaders, and I find out what's happening, what's really, really going on in the industry. What are the trends? What are, clients really looking for when they're hiring? What is the stuff that they really struggle with? Are there areas where, they maybe could deal with their peers and learn from their peers? And I just try and sort of facilitate all that for them. So what I mean by that is we do lots of like roundtable things for them where they can come along and learn, they can network with their peers. So yeah, it's basically relationship building. That's what I do now. And you might have guessed, I like to talk, so it works quite well for me.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, I mean, this podcast might take quite a long time because that's me as well. I like to talk, so we'll see what happens. But no, thank you. That's good because it puts like the rest of what we're going to talk about in perspective. I think. So and it's interesting. You were in the previous thing of actually doing the operational side, and now you're more, as you say, talking. Here's a basic question. What would you say are the key skills for an EHS professional these days?
Yeah, and it's a great question because it's changed a lot since I started. So 15 years ago, when I first joined HSE and I was doing all the day-to-day recruitment, it was really, really compliance led. Okay. It was all about that technical, tick box. Let's just make sure we're doing everything right. And obviously that has changed so much with all of the culture stuff that we've been looking at over the years. So at the moment, there's 2 main trends that we're seeing. At the senior end of the market, so senior managers, heads of, directors, that sort of thing, it's very much about what we used to call soft skills, what we kind of now call human skills. That's the major thing. It's about finding people who obviously have the technical capability, but who have got more than that, who are able to engage, who are able to inspire, very much about getting that buy-in from the board. It's about who you are as a person, more about more than what you know. Which I think that's changed quite a lot. And then at the junior end of the market, even though those roles do tend to be more focused on the technical and that day-to-day and the operational stuff, it's very much focused on experience, we're finding now. So it's good for people to have qualifications, of course it is, but most of our clients, they want people that have done it. at that end of the market. They need people that have spent, 2 or 3 years, in the trenches. So they really, really get it. They understand the nitty gritty. So yeah, so it's slightly different depending on where you're aiming yourself, I guess. But I think that senior end with the soft skills thing, that is just growing and growing and growing. That's not going to go anywhere. So, if you're looking at leadership roles, that's 100% what you need to be sort of upskilling yourself on at the moment.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, and that's really comforting to me as an EHS professional, because I mean, yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what it should be about, because, we can get the technical skills, that's education to a degree, it's experience to a large degree. Yeah, fair enough. But that soft skills, I mean, you can learn soft skills through experience. It takes a long time. And some people never learn them. I feel like, but it's good to know that senior level requirement is about softer skills, people skills.
It absolutely is. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think, like you said, the technical stuff you can always learn. And because health and safety is always training, there's always, like I said, new trains of thought, there's new legislation. Clients are sort of moving away from this idea that you actually have to be the expert. You don't have to know it all. They don't need you to know it all. Okay. What they need you to do is understand how to find the information, how to translate that information to people and get them understanding it and get them buying into it. That's way, way more important.
Yeah, I'm with you. And we've all seen, I'm sure you have, as much as I have, people that are highly technically skilled and can recite what the law says about X, Y, or Z, but then, and that's useful, in a certain role, but then have they got the softer skills, as you said, to actually make people follow them? And, because really it's not about the law, it's about, like, we want to stop people getting hurt when they done well. So you would hope the law agrees with that, which we know it does, but it's not about reciting the law. So, I mean, the people skills, the softer skills, incredibly important. And again, I'm going to go off script, so I'm really interested in this bit. I feel like from I mean, we do many things at Make UK, but we do a lot of education and training. And from a education and training point of view, we've seen softer skills get woven into the syllabus of lots of things over time, NEBOSH diploma, whatever it might be. So I don't do much of delivering that training anymore, but I used to do, I had a period of 10 years delivering it, let's say. And at the beginning of that, there was very little about soft skills in it, a bit about behavioural theory, very straightforward. And now it's much more softer skills. So it's comforting to know what is a requirement in the workplace is actually translated to the qualifications that people, let's say, associate with these roles.
Absolutely, and it does just make sense. It's the way that the industry's been going for a while. But if you think about it, I mean, you can have the best policy in the world and it can be perfectly compliant and follow all the legislation, but if nobody in the business is going to listen to it or paying attention to it, it's not worth anything. And that's where all that soft skill stuff comes in.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Now, here's leading on from that. Here's it's an opinion question, so it's not a difficult question, but I'm interested in your opinion. So I just said, the NEBOSH diploma, and that's the sort of level 6 level of qualification that we say to professionals that employers are looking for. So let's two-part question here. Would you agree? I mean, at a senior level, are people saying, have you got a NEBOSH diploma, or is it not important? I mean, what do you think?
So the qualification stuff is always going to be important. That there's no getting away from that. You need to have the right level of qualification for a role. Okay. But the thing I would say is, I think in the past, people have got really, really hung up on the qualification side, and they think that the more qualifications they do and the more letters after the name and the more certificates they've got, then the easier it's going to be for them to progress and to get those jobs. And that isn't the case anymore. Okay. So most of the clients we're working with, if we're looking for a senior role, they want a head of or a director or something like that, they will ask for our advice. And we will say, look, we would expect someone to be, level 6, or, that's where we would want someone to be sitting. But they will usually take our advice. If we find someone and say, look, this person is still working on that, but this is why we think they're a great fit. They've been working to this level. They can show real, demonstrative experience in culture change or whatever it is. Their clients are quite open to that nowadays. But qualifications are always going to be important, and the standard is still pretty accurate that if you're advisor, you need to have that sort of cert level. If you're looking at manager above, you need to be that kind of diploma level. I don't think there's ever any getting away from that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just want to encourage people, I think, to stop thinking about qualifications as the be all and end all, because it's not. And we've definitely had that in the past where people call us up and they say, well, I've got 2 pages of qualifications and all these different certificates, and I can't get anything, and that's kind of why that's just not really a priority for most clients.
I mean, that is really, again, I just repeated myself, A, very interesting, but B, good, I think, because it supports what we're saying to people. There is that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. We both know what we're talking about. That's good. But yeah, I mean, clearly you've got to have that basic level, because someone's going to say, your advisor, your director, whatever level it might be, have you got that qualification?
Exactly.
So got to do that, absolutely. But yeah, and that might get you through the door, I suppose, in terms of a CV or something. But have you got those softer skills? Can you express that in an interview setting? And again, seeing how education's moved on 10 years ago, none of that softer skills was featured in the syllabus, and now it is. And I'm not saying because you've done an NEBOSH diploma in the last 2 years, you'll have those softer skills. I would say you'll know about them, and you know and you know they're important. There are lots of other ways to develop those. So yeah, it's good that all lines up. So fantastic.
Good. Yeah.
The second part of the question, and again, I mean, honest answer, because I don't.
Sure.
I'm
always honest. Don't worry.
No. Yeah. Well, that's good. What about IOSH membership, and where does that fit in? I mean, is that genuinely important? We talk quite a lot about chartered member. Etc. That seems to be the bar. What do employers think? What do you think about that?
Yeah, sure. So I think that has changed slightly with employers, because again, back in the day when I first joined, it was absolutely imperative. If you were looking at a senior level role, it was chartered or nothing. They wouldn't even consider you. That has changed. Most employers now are quite open. They don't necessarily have to have membership. It's a good thing to have, but it's not going to stop you getting the role. However, I still think it's very important personally, and because of the CPD angle of it, and because of everything else that goes with it. So cards on the table, I am involved with IOSH, so I sit on the nominations committee, but it's because it's a vehicle that I do genuinely believe in. I think they've done a lot to really, really upskill themselves and make themselves more modern and more applicable to what's going on at the moment. And all of that is the things that's important. So that's, if you're a member of IOSH, that's getting involved in the branch meetings and networking and talking to your peers and sharing best practice. That's the stuff that's really important that, may not necessarily get you your foot in the door on the CV, but it'll help you get the job in the interview, and it'll help you do the job once you're in the job. So I definitely still think it's really, really important, but it probably has changed from an employer perspective, where it's not going to stop you necessarily getting the interview, but I do think it's beneficial.
And again, that's cards on the table. As you probably know, I do some work with IOSH as well in different ways, but as you will be, you've got to give what's the real answer, right? So I think that, and it exactly what you said, really, the perhaps the letters, that you've got, it's not a deal breaker, but actually, if you're a candidate going in and you have got those letters, what you can say is, I'm take the letters to the side for a second. What it shows is that I'm academically qualified, so I've got the level we were talking about before, but it also shows that I keep myself up to date, and I'm current, and I'm not just got the qualification and that's it. I mean, I know, because I've been in the business quite a while. We all know people that have got a qualification, whatever field you're in, and then they don't develop that or look into it anymore. With health and safety, the IOSH membership platform doesn't allow you to do that, because you've got to keep developing, and it's very hard to maintain your membership if you don't keep developing. So
exactly, and I do think that's CPD, that again, like I said, that's for me the thing that I'm usually looking for. If I'm looking for someone for a client, The technical thing is an aside. Pretty much anyone can do a technical match, being perfectly honest. You don't need a specialist recruitment to do that.
Yeah.
But the bit that I do is the talking to them and understanding, okay, so do they engage? Do they upskill? Do they network? All of that stuff is what's important, because that's what makes you a well-rounded professional. So I do think there's definitely still value from that side of it.
Yeah. Brilliant. Good to know. We continue to be in agreement.
We're on the same page. Yeah.
Yeah. So fun. I'm sure it will continue. Okay. So generally, we talked about IOSH a bit there, but generally, what advice would you give to experienced EHS managers that want to keep up to date, the latest trends, latest changes, whatever it might, and okay, there's legislation, but there's much more important stuff than that, I would say. I'm sure you agree. So how do you keep people up to date? How do you advise people to keep up to date?
Yeah, so for me, this all boils back to that talking piece, which is why it's something I'm so passionate about. But I think, again, if I go back to 15 years ago when I started in the industry, safety professionals were quite siloed. And they didn't really interact with other people in their company. They didn't really interact with other safety professionals. And that's really, really been changing over the years. And that's the thing I think that's the most important if you're going to develop, is that network that you build, that community that you build. Yeah. Because that's where we're strongest, is together. When we are able to share that best practice. For example, I went and saw a contact of mine yesterday. We were talking about the Building Safety Act, and they were saying about, they're involved in some groups where now all these different safety peoples from different residential and social housing and stuff like that, they get together and they talk about this stuff and they share that best practice, because it's not, they're not seeing health and safety necessarily as that competitive advantage anymore. They're seeing it as that actual legacy of, okay, let's genuinely change things and let's make the world better. And that's the way we've got to say it. That's the way we've got to see it. I've been super passionate for years about us changing the perception of health and safety, because that's how we make real, genuine change and help people, is by people realizing how important it is. And we can't change the perception of it unless we all start talking about how bloody brilliant it is. And that this isn't just people losing a limb, or there's a fine, or something's gone wrong. It's that stuff happens, but actually it's everything else that people are doing, and if we don't talk about that, people aren't going to see it. It's very, very hard when there's an absence of proof. You can't really demonstrate that you've done everything right, because nothing happened.
Yeah, nothing went wrong, right?
Yeah. So the only way we can demonstrate that is by talking about it. So yeah, absolutely getting involved in those communities, whether that's the IOSH branch meetings, whether it's mentoring, or whether it's those specialist legislative groups, anything like that, I think is super, super important. And that's how we kind of upskill not only ourselves but everybody else, and just make the industry better.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I think that to that point, I mean, it doesn't matter. You might have 25 years experience in EHS, health and safety. You might have 2, but the 2-year experience or less, whatever it might be, might actually bring something new to the party, or know something else. So, yeah, I mean, that's another thing. You talked about the moral imperative, if you like, at the very beginning. I mean, we've got to be, I think generally health and safety people are good listeners. I mean, you have to be, but we're good, but we're good sharers as well, because you can't do it on your own. And again, we can list lots of other professions where, this finance director of this company might not go and chat with this one about what they're doing. They might do, I don't know, but it's much more open, isn't it, with health and safety environment, to do that, because at the end of the day, we're trying to improve people's outlook.
Exactly.
In lots of different ways. Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that contentious thing. I've seen a lot of people talking, for example, like about the safety wars, where it's you've got safety 1 versus safety 2, and now it's half of which is the right way. It doesn't have to be contentious like that. When I was at EHS Congress in Berlin, a gentleman came along and was talking about the safety wars and talking about the idea that they all build on each other, and they're not, separate entities. They're all very connected ideas and connected theories. And it doesn't mean that one is the right answer. It may be that one's the right answer for that company and one's the right answer for that company. And the way that we figure that out is by talking and by sharing. So yeah, absolutely. This doesn't have to be a contentious thing. It's not like I said, back in the day when safety people held all their knowledge to themselves and thought, oh, okay, they can never get rid of me because I'm the only person that knows this. You know, it's about more than that now.
Yeah, it's definitely a big change. I agree. So again, you know, following on from that, one of the we are finding, Make UK are finding with our members, a lot of the conversations now are sort of spreading out, if you like, you know, health and safety. Let's call it traditional health and safety. People are starting to talk about well-being. And you know, the first question is like, this isn't an actual question, but the first question is, what does that mean? You know, well-being means lots of different things. My question is, are you seeing well-being becoming more important in health and safety, EHS managers' roles? You know, what's your view on that?
It is. We see it definitely way more than we previously did. I don't think we see it to the extent that people think we do. Okay. So again, it's very much at the moment still kind of seen as a nice to have rather than essential for a lot of clients. I think it changed after COVID. And a lot of the clients, they really pushed it, and they, you know, and it has dropped off a little bit from then over the past few years. So it is absolutely still something that clients think about, and it is still something that I think is useful for people to have that awareness. And from a moral and ethical perspective, it's absolutely something we should be considering and building into it. But I think maybe the reason it's probably still not as big a thing in job description, things like that, is there's no real defined path for it yet. Whereas with health and safety, it's very defined. You know which route you go, you know which qualifications you take, and we haven't figured that out for the wellbeing side yet. So a lot of clients, they don't know what to ask for. Even if wellbeing and mental health is on their agenda, it's usually just sort of as an aside in the job description as, you know, well, we'd like you to cover this, because they don't know what to ask for. There's no qualification in it that, you know, we can't say, oh, we'd like you to have a level 6 in wellbeing. It doesn't exist. So it's definitely still a thing. It's still being talked about, but has it got to where we hoped it would have got to, being really embedded? Probably not. Okay. Whether that'll change, I don't know. Maybe it takes someone coming up with a qualification or a really like a good route to it. I don't really know.
I think you're right. Yeah. And to me, I mean, after the initial questions that we sort of joked about a bit, you know, tried defining it. I mean, that's the first thing. So there isn't a definition, as we all know. But everything else you said is true. And I think added to that, in some companies, my view is anyway, I don't know if it's true, in some companies there's like confusion about, once we've even worked out what well-being is that the health and safety manager's job or is that HR? And you know, maybe we should just all work together on it. Great, but what's the path to it? So my view with like with many things, you know, nice to have, as you said. It's not essential for many reasons. It's not seen as essential for many reasons. I think one thing that could change that is an increased awareness or an increased focus from the enforcement agency.
100%.
If they were to start to say, you know, we know who we're talking about, the HSE, if they were to start to say, right, we want to see your well-being, you know, plan, route, roadmap, whatever. That's then a different question, not for the right reasons, okay, but you know, it just heightens the profile of it. So be interesting to see if anything like that happens, because I mean, all the statistics you see from the HSE say it's a huge problem. I mean, and sorry, I didn't mean that to sound like I didn't believe it. It is a huge problem, right? You know, we all know the health issues, and they're well in the focus of health and safety professionals, you know, chemicals, asbestos, whatever you want to talk about. But it's that other softer bit, well-being, you know, presenteeism, all of that. So, you know, I think that if that were to happen, increased focus from the HSE, I think that would drive something. So it's interesting to know that. Thank you.
And I do agree with that, but I think the issue is, I mean, you know, people please do correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe there's ever been any sort of prosecution from the HSE on anything well-being, because it's so hard to prove that direct line of correlation. So I don't really know what the answer is with this. So I'm very open to people suggesting things or you know, coming to us with their thoughts, because I do think it's really important. But yeah, until there's some sort of legal consequence, I don't know if we're going to get much further.
Yeah, I agreed. I mean, it is just a question. I mean, when we talk about it, you always end up at the same place, you know.
Yeah.
And I would say this as a sort of analogy, but it's actually true. I was in a room with like 10-ish different companies a couple of months ago, and the question one, I wasn't running the workshop. The question one was define well-being. And you got 10 different definitions, you know, at least. So interesting. Okay, let's move on to something else. I just want to make sure I'm covering all the questions here. So, you've always been a strong advocate for women in health and safety.
Yeah.
Just my experience view, we have seen at Make UK, I mean, I've talked about, we do a lot of training, certificate, diploma, all those levels. We've seen over the last 10 years, again, I would say a massive increase in female students, A, enrolling on the course, B, doing very well, and then C, moving on to senior roles. So I feel like from that very narrow porthole, if you like, you know, things are moving in the right direction, but there's much more to it. So what do you think about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Again, if I look back at 15 years ago when I joined, and we used to go to conferences and, you know, IOSH AGM and all that sort of stuff, and I was usually one of a handful of women in the room. Anecdotally, the difference is huge. When I go to conferences now, there's definitely so many more women in the room. And in fact, it's not just about women, it's about diversity in general. But yeah, there's so much more diversity. There's more diversity on the speaker circuit. We've done really, really good work. Every year we do a remuneration report where we look at the salaries and things across the industry, and we take diversity statistics as part of that, just so we can kind of track what's going on. And I think the numbers are probably still not where we like them to be.
Okay.
The lower end of the market, so the junior end, people coming in, advisors, that sort of thing, is brilliant. That pretty much tracks census, and that's not just for women, that's for, you know, different sexualities, different ethnicities. We're doing really great there. So that's a good thing. Health and safety is absolutely an open industry where people can join. They feel they can be themselves. So we're doing really, really well there. Where we're still struggling is that top end of the market. So when we did the latest statistics, which was in January, I think, and these won't be exactly right, go and read the report for the exact numbers, but it was something like at director level, 95% white male. So the stats are still pretty far off at that senior end of the market, which is concerning. And we all know great women in senior roles. So, you know, this isn't saying there are no brilliant senior women, and definitely we've made a huge difference. You know, people are getting those roles, but we've still got so much work to do. 100%. And again, it's not just about women, it's about diversity in general. It's about different ethnicities, different sexualities, disabilities, visible and non-visible. I mean, that's the one, actually, when we do these stats, the disability numbers are minuscule within this industry. So there is still loads and loads of work for us to do from a diversity perspective. But it's good that at the junior end, look, we're clearly a very welcoming industry. we're bringing the right people through, so that's good.
Yeah. And I guess, you know, one thing to say about that is, you know, if people are coming in at that level, you would imagine, I mean, it doesn't always work out like this, but you would imagine there's then a flow through to the senior level. So that's the hope.
Yeah, exactly. So we're hoping, you know, we'll continue to do these stats, and hopefully in 10 years that will have impacted it. But yeah, we definitely know at the moment, you know, we've got good levels of women specifically at manager level that maybe are still a little bit stuck, that aren't able to make that jump. And that's not just health and safety. There's lots of industries where that's a problem for numerous reasons. I mean, we could talk about it for hours, but a big thing is obviously like maternity and childcare, and all of that stuff has a real impact on women getting into that next level and those senior positions. So yeah, it's not just us. It's not just the health and safety. It's a worldwide thing.
But on the positive, I mean, I won't ask you what you think the solution is, because we will be here for hours, and
we'd be here for days. Yeah,
we'd have done it already if it was that easy. But the real positive thing you've said there for me is that it is starting to change, and I don't know whether you'd say leading the way, but EHS at that more junior level, as you said, I mean, I didn't know that at all, but the statistics bear out that is changing.
Yeah, and actually leading the way is absolutely accurate, because the UK releases their statistics as well every year on where they're at with diversity, just across the whole of the UK in comparison to other countries, and the health and safety industry is tracking above those numbers. So yeah, absolutely, we actually are leading the way in that stuff. So that's all really, really positive.
Yeah, and it just I guess will take time to then feed through. So okay. We're going in the right direction.
Going in the right direction. We could say.
Okay. Okay. Have you got any views on why diversity of all types, as you said, is important for the EHS industry? I mean,
I do. How long have you got? So no, just to sort of shorten it and concisely, I always say to people, let's take the moral and the ethical thing out of this entirely, right? We all know it's the right thing to do to get the industry more diverse and to make it accessible to people, but let's ignore that argument entirely for now, and let's just look at the commercial aspect of it. Commercially, it just makes sense. So there is lots and lots of evidence out there. There's a McKinsey report that looked into this a couple of years ago that demonstrated that companies where their board of directors had a really, really good split of gender diversity were outperforming their competitors by 34%. Wow. So it's a huge number. And actually then when that board of directors was also more diverse, looking at all the other protected characteristics, it improved again. And that's because of diversity of thought. We touched on this earlier when you said about, you could have 25 years experience and you could learn from someone who's got 2. That's because of that diversity of thought. They're going to think about things different. They're going to have a different perspective. They're going to have a different view of technology. They'll have been brought up in a different area. So they're going to think about things differently and give you a different point of view. And that's what then is going to help propel your business and make you stand out and make sure that you're cutting edge. That diversity of thought. There's quite a famous example. It was one of the major beverage companies. I can't remember which, so I won't name them because I don't want to get sued. But there was a major beverage company who did some work around this, and they basically were trying to break Latin America and really, really struggling. And when they looked into it, they realized it's because they had no Latin American representation on their board, so they didn't understand that market. They didn't understand that market and that culture. So you've got to have that diversity of thought. So take the moral thing out of it. And it's the right thing to do if you want to stay in business. In 10 years, if you want to still have a job, you need to think about diversity, because that's how you appeal to the market, and that's how you come up with those brilliant new ideas that your competitor maybe hasn't come up with. So that's not just from safety. That's just a general point of view. But I think it really is echoed in the safety market, that diversity of thought. Again, someone coming through with a different background, a different lived experience to you, is going to see risks in a different way, and they're maybe going to come up with something and you'll think, God, I hadn't even considered that as an angle. So it's good for safety, it's good for business. It's just good all around.
I'm with you. And it's really, really, I can't think of a better word than good. Okay. Like you said, we get the moral, and it's the right thing to do stuff. Well, I think most people get that. But does it make a difference to your business? And you've just outlined how it does. So I mean,
it does.
Just keep removing the barriers, really.
And I think this is why I talk about diversity a lot, because I'm super passionate about it. I'm a very, very stringent feminist, and I've talked about this at loads of different conferences. And that's the reason I always bring it back to the commercial aspect, because sometimes if you're talking to boards, you've just got to talk their language, and their language is cash. That's what they care about at the end of the day, and we say this with safety all the time as well. Companies say safety is their number one priority. Being perfectly honest, it's not, because staying in business is their number one priority, and making money, it could be their number one value, but it's not their priority. And so the same goes for diversity. It's never necessarily going to be their number one priority, but we can talk to them about the cash, because that is.
Yeah, absolutely. And you may have answered it there. this next question, which is fun. But what one piece of advice would you give to someone? And any protected characteristic, whatever it might be, it doesn't really matter. What advice would you give someone trying to get into the EHS industry or trying to progress into it? Any helpful tips you've got there?
Yeah, a couple. So for me, I'm a big believer in saying yes to things. So throwing yourself forward, taking those opportunities. If someone asks you, do you want to come be on a podcast? I say yes. Just throw yourself out there, because you never know what's going to happen with it. And again, there's lots of statistics around this. There was a Hewlett-Packard survey a couple of years ago that looked into the differences between the genders and applying for roles and the recruitment side of it. And they basically found that typically men will apply for a role if they hit about 60% of the criteria on the job description. They'll think, yeah, okay, that's good. I'll have a go at that, or I'll put my hand in for that promotion. Whereas women don't apply unless they hit 100% of the criteria. Women are much more likely to go through that job description, find the one thing they don't think they can do, and think, oh, well, I can't do that. And then they won't even put themselves forward. And that's another of those big barriers in that seniority thing. It could be that actually, are we just not putting ourselves forward for those jobs? Are we not applying? Are we not sticking our hand up and saying, I'd like to be a director? So for me, that's my big thing, is just say yes, take those opportunities, throw yourself forward for it. If you see a job and you think that's really interesting, I'd love to do that. I'm not certain I'm 100% qualified to be a head of or a director yet, or whatever it is. Throw yourself in the ring anyway and see what happens, because the worst that they can do is not give you the job. And you already don't have the job. So literally nothing changes. Nothing to lose. You've got nothing to lose. And then the other thing, there was a piece of advice I gave someone a few years ago after I was speaking at an event for women in safety. And that was about being the change that you want to see. Sometimes, it may be that you don't see other women or, ethnicities or sexualities reflected in your company in those senior roles, or making a difference, or so you don't know it's possible. So why don't you try and be that person? If it's that in your company, okay, there are no women on the board, well, you go and try and be that first woman on the board, and then you kind of pave the way for everyone else. So for me, it's all about grabbing opportunities, pushing yourself forward. That's the biggest advice.
I mean, that's huge. I mean, I didn't know that, obviously. What what you said about the 60%, 100% thing. I didn't know that, obviously, and I just wouldn't have thought that. But it's just interesting that you've said it. And I think slightly different to that, you do look at things, whether you're male or female or whatever it might be. You do look at things. I talk about myself. I do look at things and think, maybe get a bit of imposter syndrome. Can I really do that? Because that seems, I've never done it before. And you've just got to say to yourself, okay, easy to say, right? But you've just got to say to yourself, well, and you said it. What's the worst can happen?
They just say no. Jobs, it's fine.
Go for it. And also, it either confirms your belief that you didn't tick the box, for want of a better phrase, and then you can go away and do some development like we talked about at the beginning, or actually the other answer is you get the job,
well, exactly.
Right.
And also, there's so much to be learned from even just going through that process of putting yourself forward for a promotion, or put yourself forward for a job, even if you don't end up getting that at the end of the day. Just that process of going through the interviews and talking about things, and like you said, that's going to pick up those development areas for you. It's going to get you noticed if it's within your company. All of a sudden you're going to be on their radar. They realize that you exist and that you're potentially interested in this sort of stuff. It gets you access to people you probably wouldn't normally speak to. If you're applying for a senior role in the interview and you're getting to speak to some of the board members, you've probably not spoken to them before. So there's no downside to putting yourself forward. Other than maybe a little bit of a knock to your ego, but we can hack that.
we can't have egos in health and safety, can we? Really? The two things don't go together, I don't think. Okay, brilliant. A couple of last questions, if that's okay. So, moving on to just the future, your view. I mean, you're very well placed in the role that you've got to answer this, I think. What do you think the next generation of EHS professionals should be like, is like, any views on that?
Yeah, it's interesting because we do get asked this a lot, and it's so hard to tell because the industry changes so quickly. It's really, really different year to year. But some of the things I think that we'll probably be looking out for is definitely from that technology side of it.
Okay.
The AI, the automation piece is huge, and AI is really, really going to change the way a lot of jobs are done. It's going to change a lot of how we communicate within companies. Doesn't necessarily mean it's good, by the way, but I think it's it is going to happen. And I think that's something that's probably quite exciting for the new generation coming through, and something that they can really, really embrace. Is there's going to be lots of different things that we probably haven't even thought about yet.
Right.
Mastering new platforms, different ways of engaging with people on site, and different ways of managing and interpreting data. That's definitely gonna change, I think, as we go on. I mean, again, if you think about 15 years ago, pretty much everybody was paper-based. And now most people have got very good software systems and things like that to manage their health and safety, and they're just going to evolve and evolve. So I think, people need to be aware of that technology side and upskill themselves and kind of get well versed in that. The sustainability piece is massive. So, we've just expanded our sustainability recruitment team internally because of so many clients are looking for sustainability, ESG, CSR, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Connected. So that's a really, really big piece that's going to change. And I think that's quite exciting for us in the health and safety industry, because again, it's not necessarily a very defined route at the moment. So we've got an opportunity now. If that's something you're interested in, you can start to make those inroads, and you can forge that path kind of for the generations coming after us. So that's really, really exciting. I've got lots of my connections who are health and safety professionals who have pivoted and become sustainability directors. So I think that's something that we should really be looking out for, and could be a really interesting angle for the industry. And then I think just the regulation and the legislation piece is continuing to change. Obviously, we had a huge change in the UK removing ourselves from the EU. That's had a massive impact. Not as big an impact, thankfully, as we thought it was going to, because of the progress that a lot of the membership bodies made, protesting with the government and making sure they didn't sunset all of these laws and regulations that we need. But that is going to continue to change. I think we're going to see us probably getting much more diversified from how the EU do things. So that could be quite an interesting challenge as well. And I think the last thing for me is, we talked a little bit about how health and safety were already pulling in, wellbeing, and they pull in quality, and they pull in fire and things like that. That's going to increase as well. I think it's going to get very, very holistic going forward. We're going to see much more of the risk roles, I think, as opposed to, very defined capabilities. So, but who knows? Maybe we come back in 5 years and see how correct that was. But
yeah. Well, I mean, that would be a good idea. But I mean, I think with sort of four key areas that you covered there. I mean, we see in our members and other organisations that there's massive changes in all four areas. So, like, firstly, around technology. Okay, there are lots of companies out there still that do things on spreadsheets and, paper, whatever it might be, but really good EHS software management platforms. And when I say really good, I mean they genuinely do save you time. They don't just look pretty, right? They save you time. They are becoming more and more affordable. We're moving on from the days where you need sort of, depending on the size of your company, where you need sort of 25, 30, 50K to get one. I mean, they're much more accessible. So being open to technology and knowing about it and, what can we do? I think you're absolutely right. Sustainability, I mean, to me, sustainability, we could debate this all day, we won't, but, I think sustainability, if we boil it down to like having a positive impact, right, internally, externally, all that, it's environment, but it's also health and safety. But it's there's lots of different areas, and I think that's a really good development path whether you're in environment or health and safety or even quality or something else, bring it all together, it's sustainability. And, there are qualifications. We know that IEMA have just changed their name. Yeah, and their qualifications are more about sustainability. But you're right, I think there's more of a holistic path that needs to be sort of advised to people, in my opinion. And then around the regulations in Europe and all of that sort of, absolutely. I mean, the very straightforward example of CE marking and UKCA that we and the trade bodies fought against, that's one thing, but it's going to change for sure. So being abreast of that. Okay, Laura, thanks, genuinely been absolutely brilliant. My last question is, excuse me, sorry, if people want to know more about the work you're doing or want to get in touch even, what's the best way for them to do that?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a couple of ways people can get hold of me. I'm on LinkedIn. Pretty much 24 hours a day. It's my guilty pleasure. So they can reach out or just drop me a message there. I'll happily chat to people. But if they want more sort of general information, they can go check out our website. So it's just hsecrecruitment.com. Go and have a look at us. It's got the rest of the team on there. And do you know what? There's loads of really good resources on there as well. So, for example, the remuneration reports that we talked about with all the diversity stats, they're all on there. So you can go and download those. All of our white papers are on there. Lots of blog pieces about things like this, about, the future of safety and stuff like that. So go and have a look at that as well. That's a good way to get a hold of us.
Brilliant. Fantastic. I will go and do that immediately after we've pressed the stop button. Okay, Laura, I've said at the beginning, but again, thank you for your time. I know how valuable it is, but it's really been insightful, really been useful for our members, I think. So thank you very much, and see you some other time.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. Thank you.
All right, cheers. Thanks for joining us. Hope you've enjoyed today's show. Make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss out on future episodes, and I'll see you on the next one.